Welcome back. What a delight and an honor to have back with us today Dr. Richard Land. He is the president of the Southern Evangelical Seminary, and every time we have him on, we always get a great response. By the way, their website is ses.edu, ses.edu, that's Southern Evangelical Seminary, and they sponsor one of the great seminars that you must attend every year, so maybe we get a little bit about that as well. But we have an interesting topic to talk to him about today. Hi, Dr. Land. Good to see you, my friend. How you doing?
Morning. How are you?
Good. Doing great. Doing great. First of all, the big seminar that you do every year, I know that it's pretty much in the history, but how are things?
Well, it was great. We had, I think, consensus was we had the best one we've ever had in 22 years. Just the last week, about 2 weeks ago. And next year's, we're already excited about it. We've got Jay Sekulow coming to be one of our speakers. And it's going to be, the theme next year is going to be, the defense never rests. Defending faith. The defense never rests. We're ever out there. You know, Peter said, be always ready to give a reasonable explanation of the hope that lies within you. And that's what we equip people to do. We prepare people to do. People left inspired. They left encouraged. I'm very grateful. I get the credit for what all of my staff do working year round to put this thing together. But we had about 1,700 people in Charlotte for our seminar. And next year it's going to be October 14th and 15th, just 2.5 weeks before the presidential election.
Wow. Well, I have to tell you, Dr. Land, of all the things that we do here on the Dove television network, apologetics is by far the #1 topic. And what's interesting, not only does it attract new believers, but well-seasoned believers are now beginning to think, uh-oh, I've been sitting in church all this time, I'm not sure what I believe. So apologetics is a big topic these days.
Oh, there's no question about it. I'm convinced. I said in my inaugural address that I think that the way we're going to spell discipleship and missions and evangelism in the 21st century is going to be apologetics. That's the name of the game. And that's why we have activated our Southern Evangelical Apologetics Lay Institute. And anybody anywhere in the world can take our basic certificate and our advanced certificate from the comfort of their own home on the internet. They can take it online. And, the very first course is Dr. Geisler's Introduction to Apologetics. And we put it on the bottom shelf. We have a professor come on and say, here's what Dr. Geisler's going to tell you. Then we show them a tape of Dr. Geisler saying it. And then we have the professor come back and say, now, here's what Dr. Geisler just told you.
All right, so you can get more information by going to ses.edu. And by the way, they do now have a new smartphone app as well. You can check that out. All right, Dr. Land, kind of interesting topic today, and I'm not even sure where this is all going, but we're hearing more and more about keeping loved ones alive through virtual avatars. In other words, shows the human quest for immortality. But we even had a story on our show today about that, and our news today about that. Why do you think this is an interest?
Well, I think people are fascinated by it. First of all, we all face the absolute fact that unless we're alive when the Lord comes back, we're all going to die. And people don't like that. They want to live on. They fear death, especially if they're not Christians. Now, I personally don't fear death. I'm a little uncomfortable about some of the ways I might die, given some of the ravages of some of the diseases that we know about in the country and in the world. But and some of the maladies you can give it, I have no fear of death. To be dead is to be present with the Lord. But if you're not a Christian, that's a real concern. You have this quest just to live on and have immortality. And so you have these people who are saying with the advances in technology, you're going to be able to put memories and everything and sort of have a virtual person. I think the problem with that, the presupposition is wrong. The presupposition is that human beings are just, sort of organic computers, are chemicals, and there's no divine touch. There's no divine image. So that if you really believe that, if you believe that human beings are just sort of meat computers and a collection of molecules, And then you could believe you could create a human being, you could keep a human being alive. But anybody who's been to a funeral of a loved one knows that that loved one is not there. The person that made that loved one is gone. The body remains. That's the house in which they lived. So, you know, they're only going to be able to, at best, create a shadow image, really sort of a replica of a loved one, not the loved one themselves, because you cannot create what only God can create, which is creating man in his own image. And this is what I think is missing when you have people like Hawking and others saying they're concerned that we're going to create robots that are going to exceed human beings and take over from human beings. No, we're not, because a robot does not have the image of God. What does concern me, and I think should concern all of us, are the efforts of transhumanism, where they're taking existing human beings and they're putting nano robots in their brains and other enhancements, and I use that term, quote, in enhancements, in order to make human beings smarter, better than they are now. We're not God. And for us to try to enhance human beings, what's an enhancement? We're not qualified to do that. We're not qualified to say what's an improvement and what's not an improvement. What this is, what transhumanism is an attempt to do, you know, to sort of speed up evolution, to speed up eugenics. It's really high-tech eugenics. And that does worry me, because I'm afraid that we're going to create some Frankenstein-type monsters. And when we start changing the germline, the actual reproductive capacity of people, and we start putting nano robots and little tiny robots in their brain to increase their intelligence, to enhance their intelligence, as I said, we are fallible, fallen human beings. We cannot give an infallible definition of enhancement. We're not God. Only God can do that.
Fascinating. It all stems from what seems to be a clear understand about eternity, which in one case prevents an incredible opportunity for witnessing, but on the other hand, that vacuum is being filled by all this other stuff that you just mentioned.
Well, you know, I was asked what I thought about all this the other day, and I said, it's really, you know, this is as old as sin. The devil wanted to take over from God in heaven and revolted against God. And when he came to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, he said, you know, God's not telling you the truth. If you eat of the fruit of the tree of the garden, in the garden of the tree of knowledge, you will be like God. It's this desire to be God, this desire to be our own God, this desire to be autonomous in our own right, with no obligation to anyone else, and no obligation to God, and no submission to God. This is an attempt. This is a high-tech version of the Tower of Babel. We're going to build a Tower of Babel into heaven. We're going to become God.
Unbelievable. All right, let me take a quick break here. We'll be right back. Dr. Richard Land's with us today. He is the president of the Southern Evangelical Seminary. And let me encourage you to check out their website. What an incredible resource. And a lot of these courses, as Dr. Land just mentioned, can be taken online. And now you can get a free SES smartphone app as well. So check it out at ses.edu. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back, and our special guest today, and always an honor to have him, is Dr. Richard Land. He is the president of the Southern Evangelical Seminary. And I tell you what, their apologetics conference they do every year is just a must attend. Now, it was just a couple of weeks ago, but you can already get information for next year, as it'll be just a few weeks before the presidential election in October. And all that information is found at ses.edu. It's also a great website for a lot of resources, and you can take classes online, and you can check out their new free SES smartphone app as well. Dr. Land, this whole subject of transhumanism, we're starting to see it in different ways, more and more now, talking toys with chips in it that could send information back to the toy maker. I had an article on the news this morning talking about smart televisions. You may not know it, but if you buy one of these smart televisions, and they're talked about them being interactive TVs, that it'll automatically go to the Wi-Fi in your home and send data back to advertisers about what you're doing in your home. So in other words, you watching it, it's watching you. What should be the church's response to all this stuff?
Well, I think we need to ask questions about what the consequences are and how do we deal with the consequences, and what should the Christian response be? Just give you a classic example is the smartphone. Smartphone has radically changed the way we live. It's changed the way we relate to each other. It's changed the way that we access information. And, you know, all of us have seen people in restaurants, couples and families sitting in restaurants, and instead of talking to each other, they're all on their smartphones. And they're in a virtual world, and they're losing touch with the real world. It's damaging our real relationships as a result of our electronic relationships. And, you know, I'm not saying get rid of your smartphone. I use mine. It's a useful tool. But is it a tool or is it a mastery? I think we need to ration the amount of time we spend on our smartphones. We need to turn them off at dinner time. We need to talk to our loved ones, to the real relationships. We need to nurture the real relationships in our lives. Instead of becoming addicted to our electronic connection and our virtual electronic world. And you know, to me, we always have to ask this question. I don't know if you remember the original Jurassic Park, where the Jeff Goldblum character says to the scientist, said, "You were so absorbed in whether you could recreate dinosaurs, you never stopped to ask yourselves whether you should, and what the consequences would be." It seems to me that as Christians, we need to be asking that question. Now, just exactly what are the possible consequences of this? And how do we deal with the consequences of this? Because every advance in technology has a consequence. It has good consequences, but it also can have bad consequences. Now, I'm not a Luddite. I mean, you know, I'm all for technical advancement. But I do think we ought to draw the line at the kind of enhancement that can't be reversed, you know, changing the germline of human beings so that you permanently change how they reproduce. You change their gene structure. That's way beyond our pay grade.
It seems to me, if we're not careful, what's happening here is the cheapening of what it is to be a human being. We're making science and technology the God and not the creation of the human being. So in other words, we're looking at ourselves as a lesser person than what God made us to be.
Well, we certainly are in one way, but in another way, we're becoming our own God. You know, we're saying, I'm going to be God. We as human beings are going to be God. We're going to build a tower to heaven, the Tower of Babel. It is a failure to understand that human beings are sacred, and it is a failure to understand that we are the divine creation of God, but we're also fatally flawed by sin. And so we do not have the godlike ability to decide what is an enhancement, what's not an enhancement, what is good, what is bad, in the way that would allow us to make the kind of creation decisions that technology is now giving us the ability to do. And I would encourage people to go to our website, ethics.ses.edu. We've started a center for the ethics of emerging technologies, because this is a whole new field, and Christians need to be concerned about it. And by the way, if they download that SES app, they get the best of the last 22 years of the talks at our annual conference. So you get an apologetics library in your pocket.
I'm going to come back to the subject of eternity. Isn't this a real opportunity for the church to talk about eternity and not let it have it been confiscated by technology?
Well, Well, it is. It's not only an opportunity to talk about eternity. It's an opportunity to talk about the fact that human beings are not just, specks of dust blown on the wind of fate, as Bertrand Russell said. We're not just a biological accident. We're not the product of the supposed Darwinian theory of evolutionary origins. We are not that. We are the special creation of God. We are more than just molecules and meat computers. And at the same time, while we are more, we also have a fatal flaw, and it's called the sin nature that we inherited from our first parents, which precludes us from having the godlike omniscience and the godlike wisdom to be able to decide how we're going to, quote, improve human beings, end quote.
All right, Dr. Land, I want to come back and kind of squeeze your heart a little bit, and that's your seminary. For those who perhaps are not familiar with it, what can people learn by attending, even if it's online?
Well, not just even if it's online, about 80% of our students are now online. And I tell you, you talk about tugging your heart, it moves me to read the letters and the emails I get from students who say, oh, thank you so much for allowing us to take these courses and to get an education and to equip ourselves online. Our average student is 35 years old. Our average student is already into a career, into a ministry, and they say, we want to be better prepared. We want to equip ourselves to be better used by God, but we just can't pick up our families and move to Charlotte. Well, now you don't have to. We're bringing it to you. We're going to redeem technology for the Lord's use. The majority of our students are taking classes streaming, which is in real time, which means that they are taking the class while it's being taught in Charlotte. They're taking it in real time wherever they are, either in America or even overseas. I had 2 students last summer from Uganda that were taking the class in real time and able to see me and to hear me and to ask questions and to hear the other students ask questions. It was like they were sitting in the classroom. And so, the technology is absolutely amazing. And part of the ethics of emerging technology is talking about how we as Christians can redeem that technology for the Lord's work.
Do you sense a revival in America?
I think that the Pew Research shows what's going on in America. The Pew Research on religion in America shows that America is getting less religious and more religious at the same time. You see that the percentage of Americans who claim to be Christian has dropped from 78% to below 70%. But at the same time, the people in America who say that religion is very important in their lives or important has gone up. So the people who were nominal Christians, the people who were cultural Christians, as the price for being a Christian rises in this politically correct post-Christian culture, they are sloughing off. But the people for whom Christianity and religion is still very important, they're getting more religious. So we're getting more religious and less religious at the same time. I see signs of revival. I see signs of awakening. I also see signs of apostasy.
But hasn't this, as bad as the Christian persecution is coming to America, we're beginning to see all kinds of it, signs of it, isn't it some way healthy?
Well, it's healthy in the sense that it is going to separate the wheat from the chaff. And it's going to make it easier to explain to a culture what a Christian really is. As I watch Christianity in America today, I think about that famous quote from Jaroslav Polakin, the Yale theology professor, who said, "Traditionalism is the dead faith of the living. Tradition is the living faith of the dead." And we're seeing those who are Christians just out of traditionalism, out of habit, out of inheritance, they're sloughing off. But those who have the living faith of the dead, those who have the tradition of the gospel once delivered to the saints, it's going to be clearer. It's going to be clearer to understand the difference. And it's going to make for a purer church. It's going to make for a more well-defined church. But it's also going to mean, as we lose the influence of cultural Christianity, it's also going to mean a culture that is more self-centered, more selfish, more insensitive, and more narcissistic.
Well, given that, do you think the church will ever change that now? Will it rise up and literally influence the culture?
Well, it could very well. I mean, you know, we don't know the future. We just know we're supposed to be faithful. I think we can certainly have a great revival and another great awakening in this country, or we could be in for a period of severe apostasy. I mean, I see signs everywhere that there is growing revival and there is growing awakening, but at the same time, I believe that we're under the judgment of God. And how can we say we shouldn't be when we've killed 57 million babies in child sacrifice in the last 2 generations? I believe that, frankly, I believe that President Obama, being the President of the United States, is a judgment of God on America. Great political and spiritual leadership is a sign of God's blessing on a country. Its absence is a sign of God's judgment.
Wow, that is fascinating, and I think a lot of people would see a big hearty amen. And as we get a little bit further down the road and get through the primaries and some of these candidates get narrowed down, I'd like to have you comment on how important it is that we look at these candidates spiritually as much as we do politically. Dr. Land,
no question about it.
You are a delight. Thank you, my friend. And again, I just want to say to our viewers and listeners, look, the Southern Evangelical Seminary is an incredible resource for you. Whether you want to do real time, you want to do it online, whatever it is, go to ses.edu. Download the smartphone app and take advantage. And then all the speakers that they had at their most recent conference is available there. You can see that. And then, of course, think about and pray about attending it next year. Dr. Land, thank you, my friend. God bless you, pal. Keep up the good work.
God bless you.
Okay. And again, let me just give you that again. It's SES. That stands for the Southern Evangelical Seminary, ses.edu. It is a terrific resource. Check it out. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.